Hello there. Can anybody hear me? Can anybody hear me? Damn. Can you see me? All right. Can anybody hear me? Okay. Good lord. Uh, with everything we were dealing with as far as using Restream, I decided to use my OBS broadcaster. Why am I hearing myself? I should not be hearing myself. Why am I hearing myself? Give me 1 second. I hate this technology crap. I don't know. I don't know. I'll just go with it. I shouldn't be hearing myself, but I don't know why I am. As long as everybody can hear me and see me, I'm perfectly fine. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to mute my computer speaker so I don't continue to hear myself. When I do, I'm going to ask you guys if you can hear me. I need somebody to let me know. Alright, can anybody hear me still? Alright, you know what I'm going to do here? Pop this out. No, I don't want to do that. Give me back. Alright, that's what I'm going to do. No, I don't want to do that. There we go. Sorry, guys, this is just weird. But, alright, you can hear me. Is the sound good? Is the picture good? Because I know, like I said, we were having trouble with Restream, so I'm using OBS. Awesome. Thank you. All right. So, all right, I'm just going to jump into it. So, I believe it was Sunday night. I was scrolling through TikTok, I guess they call it doom scrolling, like I always do. And I happened upon a video, and I see these kind of videos all the time where people are in, these different places that nobody knows about. And I don't know why this one particularly got to me at this point because generally they don't. Um, but it was this video of there was obviously a female voice, but she wasn't on the video. She was showing what was in front of her, and they were heading into, I guess, this little known, very hidden bar type thing in Las Vegas. And, normally that wouldn't, bother me at all. It'd be cool to see. But when they started talking about this place and, not the fact that it was exclusive, but the fact that, it's little known and all this, they started talking about the food and the entertainment, I guess, that they have there. And they started talking about these dishes that looked so simple, like you would have on your dinner table. And I think what got me is the fact that they were talking about the prices. Some of these prices for one meal were probably half of my grocery bill. And it blew me away because some of these dishes that they were talking about, they were saying that they were upwards of 75, 85, $95. It's like, why would you pay $95 for food? I can understand paying to get into this place. I don't know if you necessarily have to. That's probably why all the food is so damn expensive. If you had, but paying for dinner and a show because there was entertainment like on stage and then walking around, I can understand a little bit higher prices. But I don't understand how people can rationalize going to these little known places that aren't even exclusive, really. They're just very unknown. Paying, upwards of that much money for, like I said, a dinner table type meal, and then coming out and bitching and complaining that, they can't make ends meet. In an economy that we're in right now, I'm curious if, from your guys' perspective, do you think that tourist trap type areas or attractions are predatory, or are they more predatory now? Let's see. Britt said BANFF. Is that actually a place in Alberta? Predatory in the sense that while, the average family is struggling, these places are still charging those kind of prices for novelty kind of thing. You guys have some really weird names for places up there, Brett. Huge tourist trap location, beautiful, but holy fuck, is everything expensive? Yeah, I've experienced that. I guess the whole reason that it kind of stood out to me is um, where I grew up is trying to get things situated here. Forgive me. Where I grew up wasn't necessarily a tourist trap. However, there was a town or a village, I guess, that was just north of me, about 15 minutes, Lake George Village. And while I didn't think it was a tourist trap, um, because obviously I lived 15 minutes from it, I went up to it all the time. I know that it was considered a tourist trap because the bulk of their business was done from, I would say, May 1st to probably the end of October. So they were definitely a seasonal area. Like people lived there year round, but the bulk of, the hustle and bustle that you saw was very seasonal. Spring, summer, and into the kind of the middle of fall. But I always kind of, like I said, I always just kind of considered it a cool area to be in because even though it was considered a tourist destination, none of the prices were ever jacked up or unreasonable. When I went to Niagara Falls in I think '07, I want to say somewhere around there, and that was ridiculous. It was me and a bunch of friends that I worked with because I worked at one of the Six Flags parks in upstate New York, and we had what we called internationals, which were people that came from other countries to work with us at the park. And one of the places they wanted to go was Niagara Falls. Now, granted, I had never been there, so I was thinking, why not? So one of our security guards from the park joined us and drove us up. And this was back when I was extremely stupid and offered to pay for damn near everybody when it came to certain things. And we went to uh, the Hard Rock Cafe. And now, being that I am big into music and the Hard Rock Cafe is just obviously filled with musical memorabilia, I obviously wanted to see. Did I switch to a stream? Yeah, I'm currently using my OBS broadcaster instead of Restream because of all of the problems we were having with it the last 2 days. Um, so when we went up to Niagara Falls, we went into the Hard Rock Cafe because I obviously wanted to see it, and we obviously got lunch. I think it was, yeah, we got lunch there, and the internationals that were with us, because they were not American, their drinking ages from their respective countries were I think 16, either 16 or 18, and they had to be at least over the age of 18 to come to the States and work as an international. So they got drinks. I don't know how they managed to get drinks because, it was technically breaking our laws. So I don't know how that worked out because I completely forgot. But they got drinks. We all got food. We never shared food, which is something that I learned after the fact. We all should have gotten like one giant dish and shared different foods. That's a mistake I'll never make again. Uh, and I'm thinking this is, like I said, this is back in the early 2000s. I'm pretty sure that that lunch alone for 8 of us was just over $200. And it blew me away because I had never paid that much for food. But because of the fact that it was the Hard Rock Cafe and it was, you know, a, I'm not a luxury, that's a wrong word that I'm thinking of. Um, but being that it was this tourist attraction, they figured they could charge an absurd amount. The next time I went to a Hard Rock Cafe was when I went to, I believe it was, yeah, when I went to Wizard World Nashville, and uh, I was there for, what is it called? Dragon Con. No, not Dragon Con. Dragon Con's in Atlanta. I was there for, yeah, Wizard World Nashville. Wow, my brain is all over the place. Um, so me and some friends went to the Hard Rock, and oddly enough, it was much cheaper, which shocked me. Um, Even though Nashville is supposed to be considered a tourist area, tourist trap, what have you, because it's known as Music City. Um, and it's just, I like I said, the video that I saw on TikTok, I don't know if I mentioned it was in Vegas. Now, obviously, everything's going to be more expensive in Vegas, and it's to be expected. But I can't get over the feeling that in an economic crisis like we're having, I understand that businesses want to stay open and stay afloat, and they have to do what they have to do. But I'm wondering why they can't operate in a way where they can bring in the most amount of people for a reasonable price. And I was looking at an article before I started stream. Let me see if I can pull it. I won't be able to pull it up on screen, but um, it's called overhyped, overrated tourist traps to avoid at all costs. Uh, and I'm just gonna go through some of them, and I want to hear your guys' opinions. Let me read some chat. Only went to Niagara Falls, Hard Rock once when I was young. I vaguely remember the Tommy Lee Jones jacket from Volcano on display. That was a highlight for me. When I went to the one here on the American side, because I guess um, there's the American side of Niagara and then there's the Canadian side of Niagara. Um, and I think there's a Hard Rock on both sides. I'm not entirely sure. But obviously, here on the American side, when I went, they had um, the leather jacket that Slash from Guns N' Roses wore, and they also had a drum set that Matt Sorum the second drummer for Guns, used. I don't remember what tour it was from though. But being that Guns N' Roses was the reason I started listening to music, that was fascinating to me. And um, and not that I knew that it was going to be there, but it was just something fascinating for me to see when I went there. But I don't remember anything that stood out to me when I went to the Hard Rock in Nashville, though. I think I was because I was with friends and we were just kind of chatting. It just never crossed my mind to look around. Um, did an internship for Disney. That entire county was owned by Disney. Good luck finding anything cheap there. Yeah, and actually, there is a lot going on currently with Disney because of that sort of uh, hold that they have over Orlando. Um, I guess they no longer have that kind of hold within the last few weeks. One of the um, locations on here was talking about Disney. I went to Disney World, obviously, yes, the Orlando. I've never been out west, so I've never been to Disneyland. Don't know that I want to go. At the time, I loved Disney World. Um, that was back in the time of, uh, I think Lion King was big. Or no, Lion King actually, that was one of the things that I thought was cool in Disney was that um, we went into their animation studio and I actually got to see the Lion King being made, like being drawn out. We were able to look down into the animation studio and we saw all of their artists drawing the Lion King. So I actually got to see that being created, so to speak. Um, but when we were there, uh, I think Honey I Shrunk the Kids was big because there was an entire part of the park where everything was greatly exaggerated. Like all of these things that you think are small were greatly exaggerated to make you feel like you were on the set of Honey I Shrunk the Kids. Um, and then I believe Aladdin was big at the time because this was '93. I don't remember when Aladdin came out, but I remember we went to one of the evening parades and they had the gigantic genie in the lamp as part of the parade. And I don't know if you guys remember growing up with Full House when Full House went to Disney. I think Michelle got to go up and rub the lamp, and the genie appeared. That didn't happen in Florida when I went, but it was just something cool to see. Let's see. I don't do well in crowds. I don't do well in crowds anymore. I used to be fine, but as I got into my mid to late 20s, crowds just weren't my thing anymore. Florida is taking back the county because Disney threatened. Yeah, yeah. Florida said Disney's too powerful of a company. Yeah, absolutely, yeah. I think once it was exposed how much control Disney actually was given, um, I think even people started to realize how unjust that was and how much they really don't need that much control. Because my understanding is that uh, Disney had their own police force, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if they do in California, but I know obviously in the Disney in Orlando, Florida does. And their police force was actually allowed to go out of the park and into uh, any part of Orlando and arrest people that had done something in the park. Now, that to me is like that's overreach to a very disgusting degree. Um, Now, as far as places you may not have been, but you still know that they are considered uh, tourist traps. What are some ones that come to mind when you think of, yeah, just the tourist traps that people talk about that are just absurd and they're just money pits? Because I've got a list here and I want to see if anybody mentions anything on the list before I go through it. Yeah, Las Vegas. I don't, or yeah, Las Vegas is an entire tourist trap. Like everything about that. Um, Although I kind of want to go, but I don't know if I can afford, sacrificing my life to go, which blows me away because if you think about it, you know, aside from the video that I saw with that one restaurant that's out of the way and hidden, I'll have to share that with you guys as soon as I can find it again. Think of all of the music artists that we grew up with that are technically no longer relevant, and all of a sudden they're now getting Las Vegas residencies. Like, um, I believe one of you mentioned, um, oh no, I thought somebody had mentioned Motley Crue. Um, I know Motley Crue had a residency. Um, Guns N' Roses even had a residency for a little while, which blew me away. Um, just all of the artists that, and I hate to say that, Guns N' Roses isn't relevant anymore, but um, even though I am never going to stop being a fan, I have to say their relevancy is subjective, I suppose. Most amusement parks are tourist traps to me. Yup. Um, how can you have fun standing in line for hours to be whipped into nausea for 2 minutes? Yeah, no, I get you there. Having worked at one of the Six Flags parks, um, I think what bothers me about um, the corporatization of everything is if you guys look up Storytown USA, Storytown USA is was a small kind of, I guess it was Mother Goose themed theme park in Lake George, New York. Lake George, Queensbury, depending on who you ask, but it was close to Lake George. Uh, that was started by a man named Charlie Wood. Now, I went to, well, when my mom was little, because Storytown USA was actually started in 1954 or 55. It was started the year before Disney opened their park. So Charliewood is actually considered the godfather of the American amusement park. Um, when my mom was going there, it was known as Storytown USA. By the time I was born and started going there, it was known as the Great Escape. It eventually transitioned into the Great Escape and Splashwater Kingdom. They added a water park to it. I don't specifically remember when. I think it was 96 or 97. Charlie decided to sell the park to an organization called Premier Parks. They took on it for a while, and then eventually Charlie bought it back. He would soon sell it again, but this time Premier Parks had actually uh, Premier Parks had been bought by Six Flags. So he now sold the park to Six Flags. And I started working there in the summer of 2000, and it was already transitioning into a full on uh, Six Flags park. We hadn't had the branding yet. We were still considered an independent small theme park, um, but that changed quickly. But I think once Six Flags took complete hold of the Great Escape, is when it all started to go to shit because the small town family aspect of what Charlie built, because he didn't just open a theme park. He actually bought the land, obviously hired the crew to build it and to build a lot of the rides. Some of the rides, obviously, he had imported from other areas because they were no longer using the rides. But the one thing about Charlie was he was a businessman, but he was also so invested in his businesses that he would be very hands on. He actually would be going around the theme park as it was being built and building with them. He would have a hammer and nails, and he would be helping right along with them. That was what I loved about Charlie, because he ended up becoming a very close friend of my family for other reasons that I'll probably get into in another stream. But what Charlie built, you don't, when you go to what is now Six Flags Great Escape, uh, you don't see any of what Charlie built. You don't see any memory, anything reminiscent of that time period. And it's so, for such a small area, it's so disheartening to see what they've done to it. And about 6, 8 months ago, I actually was researching on YouTube, and somebody had recorded a call that the at the time current CEO of Six Flags, like the organization, was having with all of the other parks. And the one thing he said absolutely shattered me was, because you think of theme parks, you think of family. You think of, going there with your family, having fun, having things there for every age group in the family. This guy had the balls to sit there and say that the family no longer mattered to him. He wanted to make it more flashy, make it more appealing to influencers. and the people that would splash it up online and do their marketing for them essentially. And I don't know how this guy managed to record this, but just listening to it made my stomach drop. Um, get some of the chat here. Most amusement parks, yeah. Gettysburg. Gettysburg, I loved. Gettysburg, I went to in 11th grade for a school field trip, and I have been dying to go back because I'm a huge history nerd. And I think I actually said that in the first episode. Uh, I'm a huge history nerd, and when we went in 11th grade, I did not want to leave because it was the most fascinating thing that I had ever seen. Um, and actually, one of the things I know I haven't gotten to the article with the list yet, one of the things on the list is Gettysburg. Or, no, I'm sorry, not Gettysburg. Madame Tussauds Wax Museum. And while I've never been there, they actually had a presidential wax museum, or at least a small one, uh, in Gettysburg. And if you've ever watched Doctor Who, you know to be very weary of animatronics or anything that's what's the word? I can't think of the word. But anything that is not animated, when it becomes animated, you know to be a little bit weary of that. They had these, I guess they were wax figures or something akin to it, start talking. It scared the shit out of me. And this was before I even started watching Doctor Who. Um, but yeah, Gettysburg was fascinating to me. I loved it, and I would love to go back. Um, yeah, the evolution of tourism in Gettysburg is equally as fascinating as the battle itself. You're absolutely right. Um, Sherfy family that owned Peach Orchard, site of bloody fighting on July 2nd, 1863, would sell canned peaches and claim they were canned the day of the battle, even though it wasn't. Was that is that supposed to say it wasn't till 1910? Adams County Historical Society is opening their new museum north of town this April. Looks to be captivating exhibit on the story of the town beyond those 3 days in July. Uh, Presidential Wax Museum has since closed. I only visited once. It was a bit boring, but as you sat in the benches, and a brief synopsis of each president was given from left to right. That's right. Um, so they weren't. I don't know that they were wax, but they were very animatronic, and it's one of those. I don't know if we ever posted the episode on our podcast, but Amanda and I discussed the concept of the uncanny valley theory. And I think looking back at that, it's very, very uncanny valley. I'll do a stream on that at some point. But yeah, it really creeped me out. Um, Additionally, talking about things that creep me out because of Doctor Who, um, with the same group of internationals that I went to Niagara Falls with, we ended up going down to New York City. Now, I've been to New York City twice, three times. I think it's three times, but I've only actually went around New York City twice. The other time we were bringing somebody down to JFK, so we didn't really stay for anything. But this was I don't know. Like I had started hearing about Doctor Who around this time because this particular time was the first time I had gone down in 2000. It was the winter of 2003, so it was right after I graduated. Uh, Mom took me down for the Christmas season shopping season, and we toured a little. We actually went close to the Statue of Liberty, and if you watch Doctor Who and you watch the episodes of the Weeping Angels, you know that the Statue of Liberty came alive in one of those episodes, and it scared the ever loving hell out of me. And that reason, among others, is why I don't want to go back down to New York City. Um, I never want to go near the Statue of Liberty again. Um, I'll give Disney their props. Their Hall of Presidents far more captivating than the one in Gettysburg. They did have a cool display about the first ladies and President Eisenhower on the second floor. I bring up Gettysburg as a historic site, tend to become tourist traps. I feel most places like these are doing a good job in shedding the tourist trap stigma, yes. Uh, as awful as mainstream media makes it out to be, historical preservation is making great strides these past few years. Um, the Vegas Statue of Liberty. I'm trying to remember. I think I know what you're talking about, but I don't know a lot about it. Like I said, I've never been to Vegas. Hi, Denise. Um, I've never been to Vegas. Don't want to go. It would take a lot to convince me to go. Uh, no, that's fine. You're absolutely fine. We had some trouble in the beginning, so we weren't really too far into the discussion. Uh, Vegas is a strange place in that it has so much. It has very different like little pockets of um, you know different places. Like it has attractions that are related to different places. So I don't know that you really get a feel for um, the cultures of the world, so to speak, by going to Vegas. Just like I don't think you get the cultures of the world by going to, New York City or anywhere in California. Um, they have like the places they call Little Italy. I believe that's in New York City. Um, but I think when you have little parts like that to try and say that you're multicultural, I think it's kind of bullshit. Because I think that in and of itself is tourist trappy in a sense. Um, I don't know. I just and it's like I said, and I think the whole reason that this rant kind of popped into my head, the the economic situation that we are in because of the people in charge. I don't understand how a tourist traps are still allowed to trap people, and b how there are people that are still going to these places, but at the same time turning around and bitching that they're, hurting for money. I don't understand it. Um, because, I have people even on my own Facebook friends list. Like they'll go different places and they'll see different things, but a week later they'll, be talking about how, you know, their bank account is hurting. It's like you just took a trip, to wherever and spent money. That's what happens. Their mascots or people in costumes seem much cleaner than the Hollywood and in Hollywood, so I give them props for that. Um, I don't know if I don't know what that's in reference to. Are we talking about Disney in California? Because I know, well, I don't think Disney in California is in Hollywood. I'm really confused with mascots, with the whole mascots thing. I'm lost. Um, yeah, that went over my head. Although that's not hard to do because I'm short. Um, but I want to get into the list in this article, and I want you guys to give me your perspective on whether you think it's a tourist trap, and B, whether you would bother going there. Um, because like I said, it says 75 overhyped tourist traps. Um, People on the streets begging. Oh yeah. Um, so let's go through this list. I'm not gonna go through all 75 because there's a lot that I don't really give two shits about. Um, so we'll go through some of them. First one on the list. If you're a history nerd, you know this one. I mean, obviously, we all know it to some degree because we learned about it in school. Plymouth Rock. It says, let's start where America started, except America didn't really start here anyway. It says, to put it bluntly, this attraction is massively lame. It's literally just a rock and a fancy canopy that's way more impressive than the rock itself. It says, as the story goes, the Pilgrims first disembarked onto this rock in 1620 when they arrived in what would become America. They quickly founded Plymouth Colony, which is recreated down the road in a tourist destination much more worthy of your time. But the truth is that no one even claimed that this particular rock was the arrival point until the mid 18th century, so it's likely it's all made up. Also, Native Americans were here long before the Pilgrims showed up. Besides, the Pilgrims landed at what would become Provincetown on the tip of Cape Cod a month before Plymouth, anyway. That just goes to show how distorted our history lessons are. The Rock. No, well, I don't. It doesn't say it's in a literal cage. It says it's in a canopy. Um, but yeah, that the way they just described that, it literally says so much about what we're taught in school. Um, because of the fact that they say that the Pilgrims landed at Plymouth Rock, and when actual history says that they really didn't. Um, Anybody who has traveled overseas or has any desire to travel overseas, the Blarney Stone in Ireland says, let's move across the ocean from Plymouth to another big old dumb rock. The Blarney Stone near Cork, Ireland. The deal with this is that you're supposed to bend over backwards and kiss it, and thus receive the gift of Blarney, essentially eloquence. Uh, Honestly, if that is true, more Americans need to visit the Blarney Stone because none of us are eloquent in any way. If waiting in line for several hours to plant your mouth on a rock slimy with the moisture of a million other lips touching it is your thing, be our guest. but we'd rather walk around the more interesting grounds, including the Garden of Poisonous Plants. Wow. See, I love honest journalism like this because that's something you don't think of, especially after what we just dealt with for the last 3 years. I'm surprised. I'll be surprised if there are not more germaphobes in the next few years. Um, you know, kissing a rock that everybody else kisses. Yeah, not my thing. Um, oh, here's one: Stonehenge. It says completing our tour of overrated rocks, we'll scoot over to Wiltshire, England, in order to warn you to avoid Stonehenge. It's not that this prehistoric monument is a total waste, but it's never quite as grand as you're expecting. The stones aren't 50 feet high, and the crowds take away the sense of eerie wonder that must have entranced those who stumbled upon the mysterious circle back in the day. We'll be honest, there are tons of stone circles all over the United Kingdom, many of which are far more impressive in their location and beauty than Stonehenge. The Canalis standing stones on the Isle of Lewis in Scotland are a great example. Let's see. This doesn't do the story service. The Pilgrims spent 8 months offshore near Plymouth, and it actually is quite an epic story. Yeah, I like I said, I don't remember a lot of what we were taught about the Pilgrims' arrival when I was in school, but I to find out that you know history that we learned in school was skewed for the purpose of curriculum, it just doesn't sit well with me. Um, yeah, there actually is a picture of it. Um, there's a picture of Stonehenge, and it shows how far people are away from it. Um, then it goes to Niagara Falls. Uh, then it goes to Times Square, which I'll never go back to again. Uh, thing about Times Square for me is when I was down there with my mom after graduation, is that uh, I realized how disengaged and very nasty people are down there because we were right in front of what I guess was, I'm gonna call it the David Letterman Theater, because it was the theater where the Late Show with David Letterman was filmed, and this woman was walking toward me, and I assumed she saw me because there were very few people on the sidewalk other than me, my mom, her, and a few others. But there was a clear view of me as she was walking toward me. But she was so engrossed in her conversation on her phone that she bumped into me, stopped, looked at me, and gave me a dirty look, and then walked away. It's like, how do you miss a kid in a wheelchair? I mean, I say kid, I was 18, but how do you miss somebody in a wheelchair and then get mad at them because you bumped into them because you're not aware of your surroundings? That never sat well with me. Um, there's the Taj Mahal. I don't know that I mean, that might be an interesting place to visit at some point. It says this might be the most controversial inclusion on this list. We get it. If you're taking time to go to India as a tourist, you're probably going to go see the Taj Mahal. But don't say we didn't warn you. First, you will drive forever to get there. That doesn't surprise me. Then you will stand in line forever to get in. And then once you're in, you and approximately 1 million other people will pour through the palace, utterly ruining its serenity. Yeah. by chattering, taking photos, and generally missing the entire point of the palace, which is built to mourn and honor a lost love. See, I never knew that about the Taj Mahal. I never knew that. Uh, I never knew that's what it was built for. The Leaning Tower of Pisa, obviously we all know that one. Um, I don't see the appeal in that one. Uh, it says your enjoyment of this attraction will really deepen how depend on how much you take in the title of the place because it says it all. There is a tower in Pisa and it leans. That's about it. It says, "Oh, you can climb it too if you like waiting in line to exert yourself near utter strangers in order to glimpse an okayish view of the Italian countryside." Um, says it's about $20 American to do it, which isn't horrible, I guess. It's not even that. It's people not being aware of their surroundings because it could have been anybody that she bumped into. Um, but the only reason I brought the wheelchair into it is because you're obviously very disengaged from your surroundings if you're not noticing a fucking wheelchair right in front of you. I try not to make it a disabled versus other people thing. I don't do that. Um, because it's never about that with me. Then they mentioned Madame Tussauds. There are a bunch of these strange figure museums in cities around the world, including Amsterdam, Paris, Sydney, London, Hong Kong, Tokyo, New York, and Las Vegas. All of these cities are known as tourist destinations, which should give you all the warning you need. Um, this is at best sort of weird place, and at worst a hugely depressing, which makes you question just why our society values celebrity so much. Yeah, that's something I always talk about is how we focus too much on celebrity. Um, let's see. As long as you're willing to cough up some cash, 20 between $20 and $35 doesn't seem horribly bad. Um, then there's Versailles. Uh, let's see, do a couple more that are prominent. One of the ones on the list, it says the Mona Lisa at the Louvre, but it has Mona Lisa in quotation marks. There is something I read recently that the actual real Mona Lisa is not the one that's at the Louvre. Uh, we can tell you it looks exactly like what you were accepting, except smaller. It is worth, or is it worth its weight in line for hours to peer through a bulletproof glass to see it? That's up to you. We can tell you that the Louvre has thousands of other pieces, almost all of which are beautiful and easier to see. Um, that yeah, those places are always for only pictures. Uh, they're not as great unless you're paying attention to the tour guide. And honestly, I don't trust tour guides um, because tour guides are given a script to read off of most of the time. They typically don't have any connection to what they're giving you a tour of. Um, and so I've never liked tour guides because they just seem very disconnected, I suppose. Um, the Hollywood Walk of Fame is another one on the list. Now, I want to see the Hollywood Walk of Fame, but um, let's see. I heard recently that I think it was Hollywood and Hollywood, the French Quarter in New Orleans, and one other place. Majority of the time, when you go there, you're probably gonna need some sort of face covering because it smells like body odor and shit. That's really what I've heard, and it's most likely because of the homeless population. Um, Although there are others, I think I'll end on this one: the Alamo. Now, all of us know. I take offense. One of my jobs is a tour guide. I'll respond to that in a second. The Alamo, obviously, we learned about it in school. Me being a history buff, I've always been, kind of reading up on it here and again. But there's that whole remember the Alamo. If you're like me and you're a music nerd, um, the one thing that especially if you're into like the more hard rock, heavy metal scene, the one thing you know about the Alamo is supposedly, I don't know if it's supposedly or if it actually happened, where Ozzy Osbourne got arrested for pissing on the Alamo. Now, I don't know that I've ever heard Ozzy talk about it, if it's an urban legend, but I do know when Ozzy was in Texas, there was a story that included Motley Crue, I think, and there was some shenanigans with him and Motley Crue. I don't specifically remember if he actually pissed on the Alamo. Um, I seem to remember Sharon referencing it once. But yeah, that's really the only thing. When somebody mentions the Alamo, much of a history nerd as I am, that's the first thing that comes to mind because I have more of a music brain now than a history brain. It says the history at this famous site in San Antonio is interesting, of course, and the courage of the people who died there is compelling. But a glance at the website, where instructions for this shrine to Texas liberty include, "Gentlemen, please remove your hats," reveals a problem. It takes itself way too seriously and streamlines a complicated history into simplified ideas about bravery and sacrifice. Also, it's small and often crowded and too hot. It's the middle of Texas. Of course it is. Um, as a local and someone who grew up in downtown Los Angeles, this is true. I've heard of plans of San Antonio's redevelopment of the plaza, which will involve a glass wall denoting the original fort and a new museum with artifacts collected by Phil Collins. Like the Phil Collins? Like the singer? That's interesting. You'll be able to walk across the entire plaza. Traffic will no longer cut through it. Um, that's interesting. It's strange that Phil Collins, a British guy, has something to do with the Alamo. That's really interesting. Um, but I think to end, I want to ask you guys a question. Are are tourist destinations worth it now that we have so many influencers and, public personalities, I suppose, going and taking pictures everywhere just to put it on social media? Um, are we able to enjoy these places without having to constantly be photographing it and throwing it up online? Because I think throwing it up online takes away from living in the moment of being at some of these places that really have a compelling story behind them. So I'm curious what you guys think with all of the online influencers going to these places, and does it cheapen these areas that everybody either goes to or wants to go to? Yeah, I agree with that. Well, I agree with that except for myself. I don't like being in photos. Um, so I would probably be one of those people that would take pictures and post it on my Facebook. Um, but yeah, I personally don't like having photos taken of me. But yeah, I do absolutely agree with what you're saying though, because just taking a photo of it just to throw it up online, it kind of indicates that you're not living in the moment. But if you're capturing a moment of you in that place, then at least you're still living in the moment. Yeah, seeing it for yourself is definitely better than seeing it through somebody else's eyes. And I think that's the problem that we're going to run into probably within the next 5, 10 years is people are going to be so discouraged from traveling to these places that they're going to rely on technology to bring them there. Like um, those VR headset things, they'll say that, oh, I had an experience here, but you really didn't. You had a freaking VR headset on your head and, you were there, but you didn't really experience it. You saw a computer generated image of it. Spent last Saturday at the East Broad Top Railroad. I'm so glad I remember what RR means because people don't use it that often. It was a blast as they got their steam locomotive back up and running. Didn't get as many shots as I was intending, as there were so many people. Yeah, I decided to simply enjoy the moment. If you guys ever, depending on how into transportation you are, if you guys make it to Roanoke, Virginia, where I live, definitely plan on going to the transportation museum. I'm probably 10, 15 minutes from it, probably not even. Um, but if you come here, definitely go to the transportation museum. It is one of the most fascinating places I've ever been. Get to ride a lot of the new equipment and talk to a lot of cool individuals. Yup. It's funny seeing people take selfies. So I also travel for that. Uh, vlogging and stuff has vlogging and stuff. It's amusing. Um, I will say that for the places that we won't get to see, like there's an account on TikTok called Visit. I think it's Visit Scotland or something of that nature. And the guy goes live every day showing a different place in Scotland. And I'll just sit there because not only is the imagery so just captivating, his voice is so calming. Plus, the Scottish people talking just fascinates me. Um, But I do think that in that sense, where you have people going live, so you can, even if you can't be there, be present physically there. Um, if you're watching a live stream of somebody at these places, you're experiencing, you know, a live visual of it, and you're experiencing, the sights, the sounds, and all that kind of stuff. You're really only missing kind of, you know, the smells of, the environment around, which, like I was saying earlier, with some of those places, they smell like shit, and you don't want to. But no, I do think that there is some validity in the people that live stream at some of these places. Uh, but yeah, I appreciate you guys being here. I might, depending on how good OBS works out going forward, I might do things this way. Um, Once Restream gets their shit figured out, I will go back to them so I can actually start bringing people on with me. Um, but yeah, this was fun. I'm glad that it ended up working out today and there was no big issues. So thank you guys for being here. Uh, if you wouldn't mind, hit that subscribe button, hit the follow or hit the bell for notifications. And there's some links in the description. My merch store is down there. There's a link to donate. And also, as I've said in previous episodes, there's a link for a content creator named Melanie Mack. She's currently dealing with a legal issue regarding a stalker that she's had for quite some time. If you want to go down to the links and see, even if you're not able to do anything, directly yourself, um, pass them around and just help that way. And I will see you guys tomorrow morning.